It happened in front of 200 wedding guests. A slap. Sharp, sudden, and loud enough to silence the clinking of champagne flutes. My daughter, Jenna, had just finished her wedding toast, a cruel monologue, disguised as gratitude, and then she walked across the floor in her lace gown, leaned in, and struck me across the face. For a split second, no one moved. No one spoke. The air was thick, like the moment before a thunderstorm. And in that silence, I realized something I should have understood long ago. I didn't belong there. Not in that moment. Not in her life. Not in the version of family my children had built without me. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I didn't even raise my hand to my cheek. Instead, I laughed. Quiet, clear, and genuine. Not because it was funny, but because the truth had finally arrived, wearing a white dress and mascara that would soon run. My name is Charlotte Brenner. I'm 53 years old, a widow, and until recently, I believed I was a good mother. I sacrificed everything to raise my 3 children after their father, Robert, died of cancer. I sold our house to cover medical bills. I lived on canned soup so they could have a future. And somehow, that made me the villain in their story. They said I was a burden, that I'd mismanaged money, that I was clinging to a past they were trying to escape. But I never imagined it would come to this. A public shaming. A physical blow. And yet, that moment, humiliating as it was, freed me. Because when Jenna's hand hit my face, she gave me permission. Permission to stop pretending. To stop absorbing their cruelty in the name of maternal duty. To finally speak the truth. You see, they thought I was broken, defeated, powerless. They had no idea I'd spent the past 6 months gathering every receipt, every bank statement, every digital trail they left behind while they picked my life apart. And that night, with the microphone still warm from Jenna's toast, I decided I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. So I stood up, adjusted my navy dress, and walked to the front of the room. The clatter of forks on plates stopped. Heads turned. I looked out at a sea of faces, some shocked, some confused, most too stunned to look away. And I opened my mouth to speak. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about truth. About the cost of loving people who only love you when it's convenient. And about what happens when a woman who's given everything finally decides to take something back. Her voice. Her dignity. And maybe, just maybe, her life. 3 months before the wedding, I sold the house. How? Not because I wanted to. That house held everything. The kitchen wall where I measured Jenna's height with a pencil every birthday. The sunroom where Ely used to fall asleep reading. The backyard where Mason broke his arm falling off the treehouse Robert built. But memories don't pay hospital bills, and love doesn't cover co-pays. Robert's cancer came fast and cruel. We tried everything: clinical trials, out-of-network specialists, alternative therapies, in desperation. It emptied our savings. And when I asked our children for help, I heard 3 different variations of the same word: no. Mason, my oldest, didn't even look up from his phone. "Mom, you should have downsized anyway," he said. "That place is too big for just you." Eli, always the financial whiz, leaned back in his expensive office chair on our video call. "You can't expect us to fix your poor planning," he told me. "Dad's been gone 2 years. You should have figured it out by now." Jenna didn't respond at all. Just heart reacted to a message in the family group chat. No follow-up, no questions, just silence. So I boxed up 30 years of marriage and myths and motherhood, and I put it on the market. A family of 5 would be moving in by Christmas. I'd be in a 1-bedroom apartment above a coffee shop by then. The same woman, who once made custom Halloween costumes and baked birthday cakes from scratch, would be living above a strip mall, eating microwave dinners alone. But I didn't complain. I didn't scream. I told myself it was temporary, that maybe, just maybe, they'd come around. So that all those years of loving them, protecting them, sacrificing for them would eventually be seen for what they were, proof that I tried. Instead, they planned a wedding without me. I found out the venue through a tagged Instagram post from Jenna's maid of honor. I found out the date through a save-the-date card that arrived 3 weeks after it went out to everyone else. I wasn't part of the dress shopping, not asked about guest lists or flower arrangements. I was told kindly, of course, that I would be seated with extended family and friends, which meant the outskirts. And I accepted it, because I still believed in something dangerous. Hope. I thought that if I just showed up, dressed properly, smiled when spoken to, and stayed out of the way, they might remember who I used to be. What I meant to them. That I wasn't a burden, I was their mother. But they didn't. Instead, they built their lives as if I were already gone. And on the day of Jenna's wedding, they made sure I knew it. The drive to Jenna's wedding took 2 hours through weekend traffic and early autumn leaves. The venue was a vineyard in the Hudson Valley, rustic elegance with Edison bulb lighting, reclaimed wood accents, and just enough curated charm to appear effortless. My 10-year-old Subaru looked out of place between the Teslas and Range Rovers. I pulled into a gravel space, adjusted my navy dress, and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. No lipstick on my teeth. No signs of the swelling around my right eye from crying the night before. I walked alone to the reception area. No one greeted me. No one offered to take my coat. My place card read Charlotte Brenner, table 13. I found it at the far corner of the tent, next to the outdoor heaters and near the catering station. So the seats around me belonged to Jenna's yoga friends, college roommates, and their husbands, people who had known her for 5 minutes but called her soul sister. "You must be Jenna's mom," one of them chirped, extending a manicured hand. "She talks about you all the time." I smiled, because that's what I was trained to do, lie with grace. "That's lovely," I said. The ceremony was beautiful, I'll admit. Jenna looked stunning in her designer gown, walking toward her future with a man from a family that owned urgent care clinics across 3 states. Their vows were emotional and perfectly worded. A string quartet played something delicate and expensive. Everyone cried. Except me. Me. I watched Jenna promise love and partnership and honesty, and I felt nothing. Not pride. Not sadness. Not joy. Just a hollow ache that sat in my chest like a stone. The cocktail hour was worse. Mason and Eli clustered at the bar, telling inflated stories to the groomsmen about business deals and stock wins. They didn't make eye contact with me, didn't ask how I was doing, where I was living, if I had eaten. I was there, but I wasn't. It felt like being at someone else's family reunion. Dinner was served, and I picked at the roasted chicken, unsure if anyone noticed I hadn't spoken in over an hour. Jenna finally approached, her dress trailing behind her like sea foam. "You look nice," she said. Her eyes were already scanning the room behind me. Everything turned out so beautiful. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," I replied. "It's a lovely wedding." "Blake's parents really pulled it together," she said, glancing at her Cartier watch, probably an engagement gift. "I should get back to the head table. Toasts are starting soon." And then she was gone again. As I watched her walk away, I realized something that made my stomach twist. She wasn't nervous around me. She was ashamed. And more than that, she had rehearsed this wedding with me, written out of it entirely. I was a background character in my own daughter's life. And that night, I was finally ready to stop playing the role. The toast began just after the main course. Blake's father stood first, warm, practiced, polished. He welcomed Jenna into their family like she was royalty, offering a version of fatherly affection I hadn't seen in years. Guests smiled, glasses clinked. The applause came easily. Then came the best man. A string of frat house stories and harmless embarrassment. More laughter, more clinking. And then Mason stood up. He spoke of Jenna's resilience, her authenticity, her fierce independence. Words that sounded poetic, even profound, until you noticed what was missing me. Not one mention, not even a vague nod. He talked about who Jenna had become, as if she had built herself from nothing. I had been the one who drove her to every dance class, the one who sat beside her through nights of anxiety, body image issues, and the cruel teenage years when silence screamed louder than words. But according to Mason, Jenna had always been this radiant star, self-made and self-guided. Then came Eli, shorter, more nervous. He focused on Blake, on how lucky Jenna was to have found someone who could provide stability. I wanted to laugh. As if I hadn't been their stability for decades, as if I hadn't worked 2 jobs, sold the house, drained every account just to keep them afloat. But again, I was invisible, unacknowledged, erased. And then Jenna stood. She was glowing, rosy from wine, elevated by adoration. Her voice was steady as she raised her glass. "Before I thank everyone who made today possible," she said, "there's something I need to say." A hush fell over the room. Chairs shifted. Forks paused midair. She looked directly at me. "Some of you might be wondering why my father isn't here to walk me down the aisle," she began. "He passed away 2 years ago. He fought hard, but not everyone fought with him." My breath caught. "My mother," she continued, letting the words dangle like bait, spent everything he left us on treatments we all knew wouldn't work. She was desperate and selfish, and now she expects us to fix the mess she made. The air left my body. People turned in their seats, uncertain where to look. She smiled then, a soft, rehearsed expression. But I want it known, she said, that this wedding, this day, this new life with Blake, has nothing to do with her. She raised her glass toward me. And then she walked across the room, leaned in, and slapped me. Open palm, hard, unapologetic. Gasps erupted, silverware clattered. I tasted blood at the corner of my mouth. And in the seconds that followed, something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage, it wasn't grief. It was clarity. I stood slowly, and I laughed. Not loud, not dramatic. Just enough to say, I see you now. All of you. And I think it's time you saw me. I walked to the microphone. No one stopped me. I wasn't on the program. I wasn't invited to speak, but at that moment the room belonged to me, and I wasn't about to waste it. 200 faces stared back, some shocked, some uncomfortable, all waiting for the mother who had just been slapped to either break down or explode. I did neither. I took a breath, and I spoke. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my daughter's wedding, I began, voice calm, even. Since Jenna decided to make this evening about family finances, I thought I'd share a few details just for context. I could see Blake's parents exchange glances. His mother reached for her pearl necklace like a shield. The room held its breath. First, I said, locking eyes with Jenna, I want to congratulate the couple. Jenna is 3 months pregnant. A collective gasp. Jenna's face turned white. Congratulations are in order, I continued, although I imagine Blake's family may find the timeline interesting. Blake slowly turned toward his bride, confusion hardening into something colder. But that's not the only surprise tonight, I said, because for the past 6 months, while I was preparing to sell the home my children were raised in, I was also working with a forensic accountant. Mason stood up. Mom, don't. I will, I said sharply. When someone like me, a grieving widow, is forced to sell everything, you start asking questions. Questions like, where did the money go? Who took what? Who betrayed whom? The room was dead silent. Mason, I said, turning to my eldest. 3 years ago, you used your position to access our joint trust and funneled over $200,000 into companies registered to your firm's address. You called my financial planning reckless while robbing me blind. His jaw clenched. His fiancée slid her chair an inch away. No, I continued, you used my credit cards to buy cryptocurrency and digital assets I never consented to. $73,000 gone. All while I was taking care of your dying father. Noah stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. You don't understand how it works. Oh, I understand, I said. I just finally stopped pretending not to. The crowd stirred. People whispered. Phones came out. Someone was recording. And Jenna, I said, my voice soft but sharp as a blade, you were the most creative of all. Every sponsored post, every handbag, every wellness retreat, all paid for with money from your father's medical account. I held up my phone. Screenshots of transfers. Invoices for procedures. A $12,000 Chanel handbag. A weekend in Napa #blessed. Jenna was crying now, but they weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of exposure. I would have spent every penny again to save Robert, I said, but I didn't get the chance. Because while I was managing his pain meds, you were siphoning off what little we had left. Blake's face was blank, cold. Jenna reached for his hand. He didn't take it. The best part? I added, stepping back slightly. They all thought I wouldn't notice. That I was too grief-stricken, too stupid, too loyal. I looked at my 3 children now standing, flustered, defensive. You were wrong. I set the microphone down. And for the first time in years, I felt power return to my body. Mason was shaking, muttering about lawyers. Noah looked like he might bolt. Jenna sank into a chair, her perfect dress puddled around her like melted icing. I didn't destroy this family, I said quietly, to no one in particular. I just stopped lying about what it had become. Blake's father stood up. I think this celebration has ended, he said, voice clipped. People began to leave, awkwardly, quickly, like guests fleeing a crime scene. As the room emptied, My children approached one by one, not united as they always had been, but fractured. Alone. Mason arrived first. "You've ruined everything," he hissed. "No," I replied. I revealed it. Noah grabbed my arm. "You can't prove any of this." I met his eyes. "Let go of me." He did. Finally, Jenna stood before me. Mascara streaked, eyes red. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered. "The same way you slapped me," I said. "The same way you stole from me." I walked past her, heels echoing in the silence. And for the first time in my life as a mother, I didn't look back. I left the reception hall without a coat, without a goodbye, and without a trace of regret. The drive to Vermont took nearly 4 hours that night, but I barely noticed. My mind was quiet in a way it hadn't been in years. No self-doubt, no guilt. Just the hum of the road and the steady rhythm of my heartbeat returning to its rightful pace. Dr. Thomas Keaton was waiting for me when I pulled into the long gravel driveway. Porch light on, coffee in one hand, a wool blanket draped over the other side. "You made it?" he said gently, as if he'd known I would. "I did," I whispered, stepping onto the porch like someone crossing into another life. Thomas and I had known each other decades ago, classmates in veterinary school. He had always been the quiet one, calm and methodical, while I'm the fixer, the one who took on too much and smiled through it. We lost touch after graduation. He built a practice in rural Vermont. I married Robert and built a family. After Robert died, Thomas reached out through a mutual friend. He said he had an extra room on the farm if I ever needed space. Just for a while, he said, just to breathe. I took him up on it 6 months ago. And somewhere between sunrise barn calls and late-night calvings, we found something we didn't expect: peace. Not passion, not escape, just a rhythm that felt like it had always existed, waiting for us to step into it. That night, I sat with Thomas on the porch, cradling my coffee like armor. He didn't ask about the wedding. He didn't need to. He had seen the files, the forensic reports, the quiet devastation my children had left behind. "They're going to call," he said softly. "They'll beg, then they'll threaten, then they'll beg again." "I know," I replied, "but I'm not the same woman who stayed silent while they stole from me." He nodded, watching the stars come out one by one. "I have a proposition," he said. I looked over, half smiling. That's not usually how proposals begin. He chuckled. "Not that kind. Not yet. The practice is growing and I can't keep handling large animal calls on my own forever. I need a partner." I blinked. "Me?" "You're already here. You're already doing the work. And you're good at it, Charlotte. Better than you think." I let the word settle. A partner. Not just in business, but in a life I had never thought I'd be allowed to start over. "I'll need to get relicensed, do continuing education," I said cautiously. "I already looked into it," he replied. "Reciprocity with New York, and I'll cover the courses." I stared into the dark fields, feeling something shift inside me. Not certainty, but the soft hum of possibility. "Okay," I said quietly, "let's try." He didn't smile wide or grab my hand. He just said, "Good." And for the first time in a very long time, that word was enough. 3 months passed. No calls from Mason, no texts from Noah, no desperate voicemails from Jenna. They had all gone quiet. Or maybe they'd simply run out of performances. Jenna gave birth in February. I found out through a mutual acquaintance who sent me a screenshot of her Instagram post. A photo of a baby girl swaddled in pink with the caption, "Welcome, Florence," named after my mother with love. I stared at the screen for a long time. The audacity of it. She had named her child after me, the woman she had publicly slapped, stolen from, humiliated. The same woman she had erased from her wedding and her life. And now she was using my name like a symbol of love. As if it meant something. A week later, a text arrived from an unknown number. "I hope someday you'll want to meet her." I deleted it without replying. Because I wasn't interested in symbolic gestures. I was interested in truth, in peace, in the kind of love that didn't come with a price tag or hidden agenda. And I had already found that in a small farmhouse in Vermont, with a man who showed up every morning with coffee and a list of animals who needed our care. Thomas and I got married on a quiet spring morning, no guests, no announcements. Just the two of us standing barefoot in a field, saying vows that felt more like truths we had already lived. We didn't post about it. We didn't perform it. We lived it. That night, we delivered twin calves on a neighboring farm. My hands were covered in straw and new life. My heart was calm. Later, as we sat on the porch watching the sun disappear behind the trees, Thomas asked if I had any regrets. About them? I said. He nodded. I thought about Mason scanning barcodes at a chain store, Noah facing legal scrutiny over his crypto fraud, Jenna couch surfing through friends who'd already begun to see the cracks in her curated world. No, I said. Regret is for people who didn't make a choice. I chose this. He reached for my hand. I let him hold it. Family isn't who shares your blood, I added. It's who shows up. Who protects you when the world turns cold. Who sees your worst day and stays anyway. And as the night fell and the barn cats began their quiet hunt through the grass, I knew something with perfect clarity. I hadn't walked away from my family. I had finally walked toward one. One I chose. One that chose me back.